So welcome everybody. This is the beginning of our CRA meeting for November 14th at 3 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gary Paytel.
Here.
Mr. Jeff Jones.
Here.
Mr. Art Graham. Ms. Frances Pawlowski.
Here.
Mr. David McGraw.
Here.
I know. It's up. All right, we have a courtesy to the floor card. I'd like to go ahead and do that first unless you guys have any objections to it. Mr. Marsh, would you like to come up and state your name, address?
Ken Marsh.
Is it on? Can you double check?
I'll try to talk loud. How's that?
Okay.
Ken Marsh, 2011 Gale Avenue. Every year I try to get here and talk about the budget. I know we just got done with the 2023 budget, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2024 because as soon as we come back from Christmas, I'm sure Ashley's going to come to you with a 5-year CIP. And so one of the things I wanted to show you was I looked at the CIP since 2017. And essentially, it looks like about $47 million has gone towards our streets, our water, our sewage. And that's all good, relevant stuff, okay? But we still got blight. You know, we talked about those here last week or 2 weeks ago, and I think Gary made the comment in the approval process that, hey, at least we're going to address the blight down. So we're still talking blight, and that's what this committee is all about. So as we get to next year, and Ashley's going to come to you, I would ask you to say, look, you've given $47 million to this infrastructure. What could that $47 million have done for this committee in removing blight out of our downtown? And if not 47 million, some percentage of this. I know we're starting to see $1 million here, $1 million there go towards the downtown. That's small stuff. Think about $47 million. And I'm not saying, look, you know, that the street's not a good thing, but I'm looking for this committee to ask finance about a more balanced approach where you can really execute the vision plan. And I'm sure Ashley is going to say, look, if we don't give this money to capital projects elsewhere, that we run the risk of increasing our millage rate. I would ask you guys to challenge that assumption in some way, somehow. And maybe at a later point, I'll talk about some ways that you could do that. But again, I see where we could really challenge finance in the city to get more money for this committee to execute the vision plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We appreciate your time, Mr. Marsh. Let's go ahead and do the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any discussions or any corrections they'd like to address before we move forward from?
If I could actually point one out that if these get approved, we noticed in the roll call, out of force of habit, we had Mr. Jim Gilmore's name, and this is the one meeting he was not at, so we did strike that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Anybody else?
You're always here. Just use your
Elder is under. All right, I will take a motion to approve or correct.
I'll move to approve the minutes from Monday, October 24th, agency redevelopment meeting. I'll second.
With that, we have approved the meeting minutes from, what's the date on this?
The
October 24th meetings. All right, do you want to do staff report at the beginning or end? Since we have so much, we have a dead stop today.
I think we can get through it pretty quick, only because we do have Trevor here, and he wanted to kind of brief you guys on something really quick. If that's okay with you.
Just 4:15, you said?
4:30,
4:30.
in advance of the council meeting.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Floor's yours.
So just something that's not in there is Trevor is here at the end of this. He's going to come talk to you guys about the mulch in the downtown flower beds and sort of what's going to happen next and then where he would like to see it go. And staff's plan is to get that on a workshop agenda so we can formulate a concrete plan on how to improve those beds and not just improve them one time, but to improve them where they stay consistently improved. And we're not having to constantly come in after a light rain and clean everything up, and I know our Public Works Department will appreciate that as well. Also in the staff report is the downtown action plan. And what I did is I went through this, and in that far right column in red writing is all of the updates and where projects are now. We don't have to dive super into this right now, but the reason I gave it to you is we are looking to, in January, have a council and CRA workshop. And this is just a really good way to kind of refresh everybody on where we were, kind of where things stand now, and then kind of utilizing this to formulate a plan moving forward. And so as we get into future budget cycles and creating future CIPs, kind of looking at this and looking at what the intention always was and how we can make sure we stay true to this plan and continue to implement this document. And then in the back of that, there is a color-coded spreadsheet. That was just to touch on the maintenance plan and sort of how we're tracking this right now. We've kind of color-coded it by the frequency, and then as we see invoices roll in throughout the month, we're able to track what work is being done. And we have a meeting scheduled week after next for Heather, myself, Trevor, and then our code enforcement department, and some of our building department to sit down and really discuss a more efficient way to report code enforcement violations, blight, unsightly conditions in the downtown district so we can get them addressed immediately to continue trying to push that image forward that we want our downtown to be. Does anybody have questions though on like specific projects? I know I didn't really touch on any of those. There aren't a whole lot of major updates in this, so. Jeff, yours?
Yeah, just my usual editorial comment on this thing. You know, we brought this up 3 or 4 times a year for years. And really, again, most of this stuff should have been done 3 years ago. This is 7 years, and a lot, it's just almost a damning indictment of how slow things have gone. And I know there was situations with prior staff and things like that, but it's really disappointing to see 7 years later, we're still trying to check off items on a 15 plan. So it's editorial time.
I will say I encourage you guys to, if you have a copy of the 2020, which is the last time it was updated, look at that one and then look at this one.
Well, definitely it's stuff that's been done, but it's, you know, incremental rather than, you know, full-blown
Oh, absolutely.
tackling everything. And you know, it's disappointing when it's put down and shown how long it's taken to get where we are and where we could have been.
Definitely. We have to fix it moving forward.
Gary, do you want to speak or are you good? That's okay. You do want to speak.
I just wanted to touch on another item somewhat related to the staff updates, and this is just me thinking through after reading the update that there are 4 things that really need to get addressed with City Council. Some of these items we've talked about on numerous occasions, but let me go through the 4 that I've got on my list that I want to make sure that we set a meeting as soon as possible with City Council to really go through and discuss these items in depth. One is the pure parking lot and the 100 parking spaces required there. Francis, I know you've mentioned it numerous times, and we really need to sit down and get some direction from City Council on whether or not they want to pursue moving those spaces or not. If they don't, then that determines the direction for us as what we can do from a development standpoint. I'd like to have some further conversations with City Council about the design of Latham Plaza. I think that's critical because I've been hearing some different feedback from City Council as to what they'd like to see in Latham Plaza. It's a little different than the direction we're going from a design standpoint, so I just want to make sure we're coordinated and all on the same page. And then the big elephant. as always, we need to talk about downtown parking. What are we gonna do or not do with downtown parking? If we're not gonna do anything, then let's decide on it and let's move forward so we have some clear direction on what needs to be done for the downtown and what we can do with the sites that the CRA owns in the downtown area, other than parking. We need to free that item up and give a direction. I know there's a lot of different opinions about downtown parking, but we need to get our arms around that item. And then finally, I'd like to have a discussion with council in reference to the parking lot south of Latham Plaza and the potential P3 development. What do they see as a fitting use in that, on that site? Is it mixed use? Is it residential? Is it parking deck associated with it? What would be the desire of the city of Jacksonville Beach for that site? Again, to get us coordinated, get us focused so that we can really move forward in the beginning of the year. And I'd really like to make a motion that we meet in January at the earliest possible time with City Council to review these items.
So right now, tentatively, again, we're still waiting on confirmation from the city manager's office, but we have tentatively January the 31st as the joint workshop date, and that is going to be a Tuesday. It's either, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's the 30th, excuse me, because we have an extra Monday. We got a 5 Monday January. So it's the 30th, which is a Monday. I apologize.
So that's the tentative date that's been established? Okay.
Yes. And then I guess the question for you guys is, you know, the 4 bullet points that Mr. Paytal referenced, are you guys okay with us taking those back to the city manager's office to add as some form of discussion topics for that joint work session?
So I would like to speak with your, once you're done, in regards to that specific question. Are you going to respond to her specific question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh, that's
What
okay.
you said.
I know.
Oh, no, I was just saying, you know, if the board come to consensus on those being the topics that they want us to address, or did anybody else need to add anything to those? And if so, we will relay these back to the city manager in his office.
Okay.
Were you done with what you still have the floor? Are you done? You still have the floor?
I'm not sure I understand what
You
you're
still have the floor. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No,
or-
not at this time.
Okay. I'd like to take a second to kind of refocus us as a board, and it does relate to this. So I understand Mr. Marsh's frustration with the numbers. Being on this board, it's very important that we remember that those monies did come from this area. Those monies did fix our infrastructure because our infrastructure was so bad we couldn't even support hotels. A lot of the builders would not come here because our infrastructure was so horrific, and it does cost money. And we did have a delay with COVID and other options. I'm not saying that we could have looked at to spread it out, but that was a very vital part. I will agree that our parking situation is an ongoing decade debate about if parking is considered infrastructure or not, and those funds have been stalled because we have not answered that question. I know our current council has split views on if that is something, so I agree with Gary that we need to have that discussion. Is parking an infrastructure project, or is they going to make it project per project? I think I would agree with that one. When it comes to the pier and it comes to Latham Plaza, I do think it's important that we get information or guidance from them. We did pay for a specialist in the industry to tell us what they thought would be marketable. I think I would take that over council, because I know council gets to say, but they need to understand what they told us and what they feel about that. That's my personal opinion on that. That needs to be provided to them, so it's not them coming up with what they want. It's a matter of, this is what we were told, this is what we paid for. We waited and stalled to get this kind of information. I also think it's important that we take a step back and realize that we do have guidelines on what we can and cannot do. So if we have this meeting I think it's important to keep people streamlined, that they have an outline of what we can and can't do in certain parts of the beach. I mean, yeah, it'd be great to have a bowling alley down there, but can we have it? We're gonna waste a lot of time, and it's going to turn into a big discussion, and then it's gonna be, let's change our plan. That's gonna delay it even more. And then back to the dollars being spent and not spent. We have to change our plan and our guidelines. That's gonna become a problem. I'm just putting that out there. So for me, if we're gonna have these discussions, those tools need to be available to point to.
Okay.
My personal opinion. And the only other part that we were talking about was the P3. I agree, like, just bring what we have. Because I think it's extremely important for those on the board and for those who listen to, follow us on the money and whatnot. They understand that, yes, things are slow and painful. Yes, we had growing pains. You guys are doing a phenomenal job considering all that. But I do think it's important that when we go there and have this many different opinions, and now we're going through a whole political thing coming up soon, and there's going to be people voting, and in the next couple of years is going to be, we make sure we review any kind of leveraging. It's just, this is our points, these are our guardrails, what do you want us to do? And to bring it back to it, a year ago when we had that meeting, we asked them, how would you grade us, and what are you gonna look at? I think it's important to look at what they told us, and we say, we did these things, and this is where we are. So they have things like, you know, you told us a year ago you're gonna grade us on this is where we are. These are our this is where we are, this is what we can do with these things, and we can't do anything until you tell us which direction you want to go. So for structuring, I think that's important as a group. And I agree, it's been slow, but despite the fact, the infrastructure was very much needed. So that's all I wanted to say to that. I have nothing to add to this 4 points, is that's the short version of that.
Yep.
I just add tools I request be added.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
And then if I may, one point, not a fun one, but we gotta get through it. This beautiful garbage can on the screen is one we chose. Don't shoot the messenger, please. No, I'm just kidding. This is what we chose. Unfortunately, we just found out that the manufacturer has 9 of these. We need 25. They do not know if or when they will even be able to get the additional that we need. However, they sent 2 options. And I want to keep in mind, we did go with this, and it has an open top, and it is that cedar look, but it's the, I don't even know what to call it, the plastic wood. I know there's a technical term, Trevor probably knows it. So these are the 2 alternatives. I will say this one, from the aesthetic standpoint, is continuing the open top. The measurements, it's hard to tell. It's circular, it's not a rectangle. Very similar in size. They did say one pro of this is, I guess, how these slats are bolted onto this can. Let's say that something hit it or somebody propped something up, 3 or 4 get damaged. They're very easy to replace, 3 or 4 slats versus having to replace an entire garbage can. So I did think that was a pro, and I will say these are like over half the cost cheaper than the original ones for whatever reason. This one, this black on the side is the only color. I asked that because I felt like if we could get that in a stainless steel looking color, it was very similar to the original. That is the only color they make, and this does have a lid on the top. So the top is completely enclosed, so you can only fit garbage in those 4 rectangles around the sides. So, you know, our question for you guys is, if we're unable to get the originally selected garbage can, do you have a preference between these 2? And quite frankly, if you absolutely hate these 2, that's okay too. We can go back to the drawing board. Here's your floor.
Do you have any color options on the composite wood slats?
Yes, there are other color selections. The only reason I honestly didn't put them in this is just because we always talked about the cedar, but I want to say there's like a dark green, there's a dark blue, there's I believe a red, and I think black. I mean, they're very standard colors.
No dark gray. Is it,
I can check.
like, in South Jack's Beach, there's a lot of buildings getting painted in that like white, gray look.
Yeah.
And I love it. And
Okay.
and I feel like that's old. That color is like
Okay.
90s.
Okay.
Anybody else want to provide opinions?
So this one, I just pulled up their website. This one, you can get gray slats on this one. And give me a second if my phone wants to work. I can look at the other one.
Dark gray or light gray?
It's a darker gray. And the other one as well. They both do come in a gray option.
Like concrete gray or spot gray? Or
It's probably a little darker than concrete. It's not a completely charcoal gray. Well, actually, it's got the color of your water bottle.
I was just gonna concur with David's comments.
Okay.
But gray would be better than that.
That's what it looks like. That really tiny garbage can. It's almost that exact color.
Taylor, have we looked at other manufacturers?
We have, the biggest thing holding us back is just shipping time, quite frankly. With other vendors, we thought like 24 weeks was gonna be a long time. There are some that are literally 40 to over 50 weeks out still. These we could get relatively quickly. These are very simple. I guess they pre-make a lot of these and keep them in the warehouse, so they're basically off the shelf. But I can absolutely reach out to some more vendors if you'd like.
I mean, I'd like to go back and see if we could find something that's more along the lines of what we had chosen before than to make a change, because I'm not thrilled with either of the options. The round one would be a big question mark to me as to how, I don't know, how are they anchored? Because that thing will probably be rolling down the street in a heavy wind condition.
I would assume they're all anchored the same.
I was gonna say, I believe they're all anchored. Sorry, I took screenshots. I was trying to look, but they're all anchored the same. You can see right there, we've got the same things across the bottom.
Again, I'd like to see us take a look at some other manufacturers is what I'd like to do.
Okay.
You still on the floor, anything else? Jeff?
Okay, that goes kind of into this thing we talked about earlier, plan in 7 years and all that. We gotta, this is something that we need to get going, and if we look at other manufacturers and it's 2 years or 3 years before we can get the perfect one, I kinda like this one if we can get it in the gray, and if it's currently in stock or relatively quick, that takes an item and moves it forward rather than, more analysis debate, waiting for something to be manufactured, and 2 years from now, we probably still won't have new garbage cans.
Okay.
So, I'd be in favor of going with the round one in the gray.
Okay.
I'm going to channel our chair for just a second. Has anyone considered or had or would consider our current square ones that our own Public Works creates, because he likes those? Has anyone given thought to that until we find out that the one we did purchase is available? Has anyone thought of that as an option?
You mean just utilizing more of those, having
Just
them build more?
creating more of them and
So
having them available?
They're gonna be creating more, because those are gonna be the ones that we keep along the boardwalk, just because they've got such a large capacity. It makes sense to have them right there at the beaches. We can talk to Public Works and put
I'm just wondering if that's an option.
It is. And there's just a few areas that, like Heather was saying, they don't always fit everywhere, because they are, massive. But in the areas that they fit, sure. We can talk
Is
to
there any,
Dennis.
is anyone on the board liking that idea, or would you guys like to discuss moving forward and getting official pricing on the new ones? Anyone here in favor of at least exploring with the idea of us creating our own temporary ones until our old ones that we did vote on come in? No one's speaking. Okay. I just
have a comment.
go ahead.
Looking at this and comparing it to what we selected before, I'm almost liking this better. It looks, the other one, in comparison to it, looks a bit cheap.
Okay.
So if we're waiting for that, I'm almost saying, hey, this is a good find one to replace that with this.
Okay.
So that would be my opinion.
In my opinion, if we want to build momentum, let's pick this, check it off the list, get it done, move on.
Okay. Noted.
So what would you ladies like? Would you like us to vote? How many do you need to have a vote to move forward with replacements?
Essentially, somebody make a motion in support or against or whatever the motion is, and then we need a vote and we will move forward. I do want to remind everyone, because I know you mentioned getting a quote on the cost. These are not going to be like the bike racks. We have to come back to you guys, because this is considered under that repair and maintenance dollar item. And in this fiscal year, we did budget a large amount in preparation for replacing these, replacing bollards and some seating. So these will just be a line item that we put under repair and maintenance. So
And
it should be,
so it can be done right away.
Yes.
If it's a dark gray, it could hypothetically match our bollards because that's kind of the color
Yep.
they're going. They're round, which kind of goes with the bollards because those are round.
and we will still have the
They
master
still are
plans of
open
each.
end. I mean, I'm just kind of doing the similarities because when Art comes here and Art really does like our square
Yep.
handmade ones, and we're making a change with our chair here, I just want to make sure that we're all clear and fine what we're going to do. Or not do, because we still have to do a motion, so.
Mhm.
So just to clarify, if anybody wants to make a motion, you guys may. If not, we can have a further discussion.
I will make a motion to move forward with, the model currently on the screen in the dark gray.
Okay.
Will you take roll call on our opinions, on our vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Gary Cato?
Before the motion, I have a comment.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
You know, I'm disappointed that we wouldn't take the time for a week to go take a look at some other ones. It's not gonna take 2 to 3 years to go look at some other manufacturers as a quick exercise that could be done, and we could determine what else is out there in the marketplace. For that reason in particular, I'm gonna vote no on this motion.
Okay. Mr. Jeff Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Francis Pawlowski?
For the sole purpose of keeping things moving and the fact that they would be conceptually accurate to other things and other elements we're putting in the downtown area, I would say move forward, so yes.
Mr. David McGraw?
Can we say a yes with a veto power of the chairman once he sees this?
No, because it's moving forward. We
Mm.
don't have the money.
I want to build momentum, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay. And I will make sure after this, I will send this, like I said, we just got this, otherwise I would have sent it to you guys last week. I will email this to Art and explain the color selections and send it to everybody so you can actually see the link to the actual can in the gray, and we will make sure Art is made aware immediately.
All right, with that, we are moving forward. I want to button up the last discussion item that Gary brought to light as far as the 4 items. Do you need us all to approve or give you a consensus on the 4 things we want to make sure with the city council?
thumbs up works on those.
Okay, so everyone's good with the 4 items we're going to bring to city council for that meeting that Gary presented?
What was the fourth?
It was parking as a whole, the plaza as a concept, the P3 as a concept, and the parking lot, to your point. Those are the 4 main things that we were going to make sure we focused on and gave the tools for us to have a direction from them, because we can't do anything until we know what's going on with this.
Okay, I'm confused on the fourth one.
Right. Is it like your design of the plaza, the downtown parking, and then the E3 development is parking lot south of Lakeland to have a
Okay.
For those 4, is it good enough to focus our attentions on for this meeting? Are you good with that? David, are you good with that? Yeah.
Okay.
Those are our 4 we'll focus on. Anything else in the staff report?
Just if anybody has any other questions or other item, Gary, you got with me a little bit beforehand to the questions you have for Public Works. I did relay to our Public Works Director, so we'll get you some answers on those. And if anybody has questions, let me know.
And when will you let us know about the January 30th meeting?
As soon as the city manager gives us the yay or nay on that, we will immediately send out a calendar invite, and then we'll develop the agenda and get that out as well. We'll talk to the city manager, and we'll make sure that council has copies of it, is aware of the market analysis that we did, and then we will draft up something, almost maybe in the way of a staff report, kind of highlighting what we were given as objectives last year, kind of where we stand now moving forward, and kind of what our goals are. So we'll make sure we prepare that in advance.
The only thing I would say for this is if you could have less pages, you can have as much data and whatnot, but if you can have like a singular page that says, this is the summary of what we're talking about with bullet points, and I'm just telling you from my own experience that people get overwhelmed, but the staff report's great, but it is
Okay.
overwhelming. So you can have it, but I would say, these are the 4 things, boom, 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 done. That's my personal opinion on that.
What about if you created a second document called completed projects, so they start coming off of the main document. I know we want to keep them for historical records so we can show what we've done. So it is bloating the staff report, and you know, once
Sure.
something's been done for 6 months, I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, and we're gonna actually, I had a conversation earlier today, going in, like, before the next meeting, we're gonna clean out that staff report pretty significantly. So if in December it's still overwhelming, then we can absolutely change the format or add a completed or a one-page summary, but
Or you could just literally save a new copy, call it November, you know, have a document.
We do
for
that.
every month.
yeah.
All right, we will go on to, I guess, Resolution 2022-12.
Yes.
You can go ahead and give us an outline. Yes.
Can I just backtrack a little bit? I thought before we got into all this conversation, you were going to get Trevor up here to talk
I
about.
was,
Okay.
yes.
Should we?
Thank you, Gary.
Send that back to.
Yes, Trevor will be quick and brief, but again, Trevor, if you want to come up and address the board, this again is going over the mulch downtown, what he's got planned for the upcoming weeks, and then kind of some things he wants to throw out moving forward. I do want to make the point in the essence of time to listen to Trevor's idea, and then what we're planning to do is our next workshop, or if our regular meeting in December is not packed, having it kind of in a workshop format where then we can really dive into this, because this is something that we need to discuss at great length. So we want to make sure we give you guys ample time to do that.
Okay. Trevor Hughes, Parks and Recreation. Just a quick update. As you guys know, the beds have been kind of an ongoing issue at the downtown. And last winter, in-house, we had 3 guys work, tirelessly, 5 days a week, and we were able to completely redo the irrigation and all the roadside irrigation. There's maybe one little area that doesn't work down in front of Lynch's and across the pier. That's really the only area that we couldn't get operational, but the pier will be done when the pier is rebuilt. So all that will be done. But the mulch has been something that's kind of driven me nuts for a long time. So in June, we mulched the entire downtown. Well, I don't know if you guys remember 4th of July weekend, we got about 6 inches of rain in about 25 minutes. It floated all the mulch out of the beds, come down, and clogged up Public Works, storm drainage system, their pump station. So it's really not a good fit for what we need in the downtown. So what we'd like to do, we're going to mulch the area one last time, or at least I would hope it to be the last time. But you'll see movement on that supposedly tomorrow. We're supposed to get a delivery of mulch. We're going to use the lot across from the gate parking lot over off 4th. We'll stage some mulch. We'll mulch it hopefully the last time. And then I'd like to look into some different types of aggregate, whether it's a shell that we've used kind of the front door of the entrance to the Public Works building, or there's also a product that's really clean. It's called Crushcrete. It's a recycled and screened concrete that can do a great job. It's not going to wash, it's not going to float. It's not big enough where people could pick up and throw. Or it may be that we come up with a type of mulch or something that's smaller, and then come back and you spray a polymer on it where it locks it into place. But those are all things that we would like to work on. Also, it's something that we would hope to redo kind of a landscape plan for all the areas. So what's happened over the years is as beds weren't maintained, there's been some communities or condos kind of take over beds. There's been some businesses take over beds. There's been some that just got overgrown and there's not a lot in there. So we'd like to come in and kind of make once we go through this project with Latham and Seawalk and the whole downtown, have a consistent landscape plan that goes throughout. And we'd like to incorporate that into those beds as well.
May I ask one quick question? I know this is just for time sensitive. I'm assuming we're going to incorporate that in the South Beach area as we're doing it, as we're pulling everything out for the parking and whatnot. Maybe it's like we're going to extend it all the way through the downtown state area, right? Including South.
So
The whole
the 4th Avenue South.
all the way.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Jeff.
So you're talking both like the circular things around the palm trees and then just general bedding that we have with bushes and stuff like that. Have we considered in the high traffic areas on First Street with the palm trees, some sort of metal grate?
And that's actually one of the things that I brought up. Some of the beds, you go to, people ask, well, what do you see at other places? And you go to in different downtowns, you see at Disney, and those small round ones, they do have custom made steel grates. So that's something that we could get prices for, and some of the small round ones that are here around the park and a little bit on First Street, that may be a viable option. But what we're going to do now is, because there's so many projects going on, we're going to touch the beds that don't have a project going on in like the next year. I hate to custom fit all these grates, all these areas down First Street, and then we rip up First Street and do something different here in the next year. So Taylor and I are gonna go through, we're gonna physically touch every bed, and we're gonna come up, these are on projects, these are not on projects, these are the ones we need to focus on. These are ones where we need to go knock on a door and say, hey, we're taking back our beds, and this is how we're gonna landscape it. And so that's something that we should see some movement on. It really good.
Okay, well, I'd definitely be in favor of exploring, the places where you got high crowds, people standing in line, the bar crowd, walking up and down the street, having something that's indestructible in those beds. And I think metal grading, to me, would be a feasible solution. So I'd like that to be explored.
Okay.
Exactly.
What Jeff was just talking about is exactly the same direction I'd like to see us go, particularly where it makes the most sense. I've got some photographs I'd be willing to share with you, Trevor, that kind of gives you a better idea than what I can explain or describe. But I think the metal gives us a better option, keeps those islands clean, and allows water to get in there to water the trees the way it needs to. There are actually plastic ones too, and they are such that you can cut them as the tree grows and the trunk gets wider. You can cut them back and allows that tree to grow. So that's another thing to take a look at. I'm not so much in favor of the shell option. We use that in our pool area at Ocean Cave, and every time we get a heavy wind, it blows those fine little shells into the pool, and they are sharp little things because as you're walking across the pool, you feel it very quickly. So I know it's a tough choice as to which is the right one, but I appreciate you taking the effort and looking at options, and look forward to hearing what you find when we sit down the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jar.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, thank you for reminding us of that.
Yes. Okay, 2 resolutions. Taylor, it is up to you to tell us what's going on.
I would love to. Okay, so this first one, 2022-12, this is approving the revocable right-of-way permit restrictions. That is, say that 5 times fast. So what this is we talked about it a little bit at the last meeting. The intention of this is to honestly protect this area investment for the projects that are located in basically the south part of our downtown district, where Public Works is doing all of the sidewalks and the landscaping and the driveways. And the intention is to have a certain amount of time, 10 years, where if somebody's going to come in and they request a revocable right-of-way permit, they have to be elevating the intended use of that space. So what we don't want to see is we put in these really high-end landscape sections, and then somebody comes in and requests a revocable right-of-way permit to put in more driveway or more parking. So if they want to come in and elevate the landscaping, great. You want to come in and pave your driveway, that's fine. It's the same intended purpose, but it has to be that same use. And this will also go to City Council.
I will take a motion to discuss, sir. Anybody want to discuss?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, this is because we're stuck in a situation right now that we really can't deny someone who comes in. So.
Yep, that's exactly why.
Anybody else? Gary?
Will this also be something that we will implement in the South District?
We're not sure if we need to at this time. Now, if it were to come to us from the public works director that he notices, hey, we've got this big issue and we need to address it, then absolutely. But right now, it is just for those projects in the southern part of the downtown, and pretty much that phase 3C and its projects, 4, 5, 6 through 7, the remaining projects in downtown.
Right, I understand that. I just want to make sure we don't forget about the South District. I mean, they have the same situations down there. There have been a number of driveways that have recently been done that cut across the sidewalk that the city has paved nicely, and now they put back pavers in those locations. And in some instances, I don't believe the pavers meet ADA requirements, and we really need to be a little bit careful on what we're approving in those locations.
that along to our Public Works Director and make sure he's aware of it, and then if we need to, we'll come back to you guys.
Thank you.
Before I get to Jeff, I just had a quick question. Is 10 years a normal minimum?
I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't think there, at least not for us, there isn't a normal. That was basically the lifespan of like the project, and when we would think that we really needed to start in 10 years really looking at repaving, maybe restart, let's say redoing the sidewalk. So that's where that number came from.
Okay, so you're saying hypothetically spending all this money on redesigning that part of the beach, because we have to do all the infrastructure down there
Yep.
too, because that's the reason we're doing it.
Yep.
So we're redoing all the infrastructure.
Mhm.
We're readjusting the parking and such.
Yep.
And you're saying that the life of that project is only good for 10 years?
No, but 10 years is typically, I think, whenever we would see some refurbishments needed. So again, the infrastructure itself is going to be obviously under all of this pavement. And so I think when we're looking at the 10 years, we're looking at the longevity of when are we going to really need to go in and revamp these flower beds? When are we really going to need to go in and repave areas? When's it going to get worn down?
I just feel like 10 years is extremely short for the work. But it just seemed like a really low number. So I just was curious if that was a number. So I don't know personally. So Jeff was first and then.
Just a comment on the format of the resolution. The resolution itself, or the action item itself, refers to phase 3 projects 1 to 7. And then it incorporates Exhibit 1. But Exhibit 1 doesn't seem to designate the current project that we're about ready to start working on. That's a vacant, there's no, so I think you need to, if we're referring to the exhibit as describing what we're talking about, we may need to cover the area that they're going to start to work on.
Yeah, this is what was provided to us by the Public Works Director, and we asked about that. I don't remember. I know he said that this was the most accurate, but we will go back and verify.
You just shade it and say, because this is 3C, or, no, let's see, I don't even know what the designation of the current project is in this verbiage, but I think if we're going to adopt it, we need to make sure that area is highlighted as part of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Just to clarify, are you wanting to delay voting on this or what have you before they get that to us?
No,
I'm just
agree
trying to
that
clarify.
they'll do something to the exhibit to identify the current project area as being part of what's covered by the resolution.
You want to clarify?
Yeah,
You want to
take the
clear
yellow highlighter
diagram.
and highlight it.
Yep. I made a note on here too, if it's approved, to make sure it's approved with the contingency of updating the exhibit to reflect clearly the project is spelled out in the resolution. David?
So without this, somebody can build right up to the road and put a structure there?
No, not a structure. But like how driveways obviously come all the way out, and then some people can, actually there's a couple down there right now, they've expanded their driveways at the roadway, so it's just wide masses of driveway and parking. When we go in, some of those are going to be converted back into green space or public sidewalk space, and so this is to protect that intended use. So what this is let's say somebody right now has got a massively wide driveway all the way to the road, right? It's way more than what's required by our code for what you need for parking in a single family or multifamily home. When this is done and we narrow that back down, they're still going to have their required amounts. We're not going to take away from that. They're just not going to have all that additional. And so if we were to replace that with flower beds, then technically how it exists right now, they could turn around the very next day, go to Public Works, request this permit, and there's not a whole lot of parameters to deny those. So basically we could finish the project, somebody did not like it, and then they could go back in and take out all of the landscaping and put in papers again for their personal driveway.
Mm. And this is just a vote of support. We're not actually making this happen, so we're just...
This has to go to council, yeah. We just wanted it to come, it's a recommendation from you guys since it is a CRA funded project.
And then just for clarification, the reason that the extended driveways are not they're not being calculated as part of their land use right now because they're technically on city property, that they've expanded it, and they're claiming city property for themselves, just make sure, for their use. And so that's why we're trying to put something in place to, because they're not utilizing that in their calculation.
Any idea how many of those exist?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head, I couldn't be in the ballpark, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people,
angry.
there's a lot of people who use the grass to park in too. Who else has it? Gary?
You may have answered my question, Taylor, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. This doesn't have anything to do with infrastructure work within the roadway itself, that you can't do anything in the roadway, even if that's part of the right of way. But the way I was reading this is starting to, I got the feeling that that's what it's doing. It's just limiting.
Forgive me, I don't think I understand exactly the question. I apologize.
Well, if you have utilities in the road, you've got to make a connection to the utilities in the right of way. Does this prevent you from doing that?
No. No, this is just homeowner improvements.
Just homeowner improvements?
Right.
And that's good.
Utilities have easements.
Right.
Well, there wouldn't be an easement in that case. I mean, basically you make a connection into the main wherever it is.
Well, and again, that wouldn't be a change that would necessarily, even let's say if somebody were to try and challenge it, say, oh, why did you allow this? In one of the whereases, I think it's bullet point 3, it says, changes in the right of way that do not impact the intended use of the space. So if they had to go in and, unfortunately dig up a section to put in additional utilities, once that's done, the utility company is going to come back in and resurface. And so long-term, that doesn't change the intended use.
That just happened in my house, and it was a joke.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Oh,
I don't see
absolutely.
a problem with that. I just wanted to make sure I fully understood it, because I didn't want that to be a hindrance at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yes, this is not, the intention is not to hinder those type of necessary connections.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I'd like to ask about is, I know I talked about the 10-year being the minimum. There's nothing in here that says, it just says, in general, minimum 10 years, but there's nothing that says when that ends. Is that going to be another resolution down the line, or is that going to be something else we need to address down the line?
It's upon the project's
missed it.
completion.
Yeah, it's 10 years from the completion.
Right.
Minimum of 10
Okay.
years. But
On that day, right after that, they can put in their widened sidewalk or driveway?
So, again, if we get 10 years down the line and we're saying, okay, we've invested a lot more in this 10-year time span, and these are really upgraded, these are really high-end, again, if we're 9 years and 10 months, there's nothing stopping the Sierra and/or council from extending this resolution.
so
Or adopting
it would be brought back out. Like, it does need to be.
Oh, I would sure hope so, yeah.
Because I just didn't want it to be like an open-end thing, and then all of a sudden it's just 10 years in one day.
I understand, yeah,
It
so,
goes away.
and again, if this gets moving down and 7 years in, people kind of forget about it and don't care, I don't know what's gonna happen. But there's nothing that will prevent this from being extended, should it be the desire of the council at that time.
Right there.
So this is just empowering the department to give them more ability to say no.
Yes.
All right.
Jeff, are you done?
Okay, I think this highlights, because as I recall, the Public Works Director indicated some surprise when they realized that they couldn't deny these things.
Yes.
That citywide, maybe they need to address this issue, because I think the city should have some say on what's done in the right of way. So we're fixing what we're spending a lot of money on here, but it sounds like that should be something explored citywide for all right of ways.
Yeah, I would anticipate that conversation will happen again a week from now.
So with this, is there still a way that a homeowner could get something done? No, absolutely not.
So if it improves the intended use, that's the big thing. It has to, landscaping made to provide green space that is allowing for that intended use, and it has to be elevated from what's put in. Upgrades to the driveway also, things that are upgrades to the space that, to your point, would be ADA compliant and that elevate the intended use. But again, the bigger thing is people right now have additional parking,
Right.
and there is no green space, and this plan and this project specifically calls for green space.
So they could, in theory, widen their driveway after the sidewalk, just not in the right of way, right? So they could do like a driveway that goes, whoop.
Unless it's intended to be green space.
No,
Right.
it's beyond the right of way.
Yeah, and if it's not in where we invested dollars, then we don't care.
Okay.
Well, that's not true, she does, that falls in on planning.
All right.
And it would
That's-
fall underneath the codes for,
Yeah.
and also fall under the codes for the calculations.
Lot
of
coverage
their
and everything, yeah.
Lot coverage. Anybody else? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve CRA Resolution number 2022-12, a resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach Community Redevelopment Agency expressing its support for the adoption of a City Council resolution regarding the approval of right-of-way permits in the downtown CRA district and providing for an effective date.
Do you want to add to your motion with a more clarified exhibit?
Thank you, yes, for the resolution to include an updated map as part of the exhibit to the resolution.
I will entertain a second.
I'll second.
And with that, are you good?
I'll do roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Gary Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Jack Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Frances Pawlowski.
Yes.
Mr. David McGraw.
No.
Okay?
All right, let's move on to resolution 2022-13.
All right, so this one's exciting. This is to do the outdoor dining pilot program. Again, we talked about this a little bit in the staff report at our last meeting. What this is, again, we're planning on having this full outdoor dining pilot program. We're going to go kind of avenue by avenue and test this out on corridors. This will be for restaurant establishments. So yes, if a restaurant serves alcohol, which most do, that's fine. Coffee shops as well, but just strictly bars, this is not applicable. And right now, the Town Center, the Mark Angelo Development, they are on a pretty tight schedule. They are shooting to open actually in December and January. Their construction people are going to be here with the concrete like in the next few weeks. So they have kind of requested this, the ability to utilize this program in advance of the program being fully built out. So they can go ahead and pour the concrete and have the necessary spaces done to not prevent them from opening on time. Or on time for their schedule. And so this, again, I want to point out, this will be coming from you guys as a recommendation of support. Again, this goes to City Council next week as well.
Since this looks very much like my plan that I came up with, I love it. Can you give me the details of, like, what is the whole pilot program? What are the rules to do it? What does it look like? Does it still have to be fenced?
Mm-hmm.
It does?
So we are, again, staff isn't planning on officially bringing this to council until January. So we're still definitely working out some of the kinks in that. But the intention is, yes, they're gonna have to have some sort of barrier between the outdoor seating and the road. It'll have to be clearly shown that this is for this establishment. It's gonna have to obviously be right in front of the establishment. They're gonna have to have, all their necessary insurances.
Why is that? Why do we have to have that?
Which part?
The fencing.
Liability.
No other cities do that though. In St. Pete, for example, the public walkway is actually between the tables and the restaurant, and everybody walks in between that.
So this will be that way. So it's allowed to, I guess maybe, I apologize, I didn't explain that clearly. When we literally just had a map pulled up and we're kind of playing with it, trying to figure it out. So if this is the front of the establishment and the sidewalk is, 18 feet wide, 15 feet wide, whatever it is, they're able to have the pedestrians moving. It has to be wide enough to be ADA, compliant. Yeah. And then beyond that is where they can have kind of a little barrier that protects the tables and chairs from that roadway. So they're able to have people walking in between the restaurant and the outdoor seating area. And in fact, I think that'll be the intention in most places because it kind of encourages people to stop, see what's going on, maybe come in and have a, drink, have an appetizer, whatever. But yes, that will be allowed. It doesn't have to be right up against, I guess when I say in front of, I just mean.
I'm just against having to have a fence. I don't see what it does. They're not gonna be bollard style construction. They're not gonna stop a car, so.
Sure.
It really makes cramped seating on the edges when you're trying to get that corner seat. So I'm just against the fencing altogether.
Okay.
But I love it.
I feel, I feel like we're kind of catering to one developer permits, it's the only thing that's on that street. So I do worry about that. I don't mind it having small gateways or fenceways to divide them out, just because, and like Minneapolis and other cities I've been to, on the main busy roads where there are cars, they do have some kind of visual something. So either way, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
My question is what happens, or how do they get this? Like, what's part of the pilot program? We have to do a permit for certain
Yes.
days? Are they allowed to do it during festivals? Are they not allowed to do festivals? Are they consistent on a certain day of the week? Like, those are the things that I will either vote yes or no to,
Okay.
not necessarily the fence.
So, once they receive, so it will be a permit process, and what they will have to do is they're gonna have to come through the planning department first. We will have a specific application to be a part of the outdoor dining pilot program, or, after a year if it's implemented, the outdoor dining program, it will be renewed every year. So there will be guidelines, outline what they have to follow, rules, and, if we have a whole bunch of violations, a whole bunch of errors, at the end of that 1 year, if we have essentially, problem child, you have the right to take that back. Once they have this, they then have to go, we keep talking about this, they then have to go to Public Works, because they do have to have on file a revocable right-of-way permit for legal reasons with Public Works Department, because they will be in the right-of-way. So it's a twofold permit, quite frankly. We kind of vet them, make sure it follows everything the planning department needs, everything the CRA downtown plan calls for and vision, and then as well as fire marshal and safety, we have to make sure that they have the necessary space for ADA accessible, whatever the fire marshal needs. They have the right amount of tables and chairs for the right amount of space. So there will be a pretty extensive vetting process before they're granted this.
Right, so here's some of the things that I didn't hear in that. Noise violation. Or not just that, can they or can they not have music? Because I know a lot of people who do that have music or speakers or something outside to entertain the overcome traffic.
Yeah.
Other things would be the cleaning. Because right now we on our little budget here and how often we're going to be cleaning stuff, we're already complaining about bar goers and wine. Can you imagine the drive space from diners over and over and over again? So I'm not opposed. I do like the idea of that we live in Florida, being outside makes sense to me.
Sure.
But I do, before I would vote on anything, I would need to know more specifics
Sure.
about it. I'm good to move forward with the outlining of it, but as far as, I do feel like we're catering to one builder. And I think we need to have a plan as to how we would extend this out after this pilot program, because one street for one developer is not a pilot program, that is a favor. So I think we need to have where we go next, so that it's not looked upon that way by other restaurant
Sure.
owners.
Okay. I will think the music part, we've got, there's an ordinance on outdoor entertainment, and this would all fall under that. As far as having, the extension, that's just an extension of premises. So if they are an eligible, restaurant and they've already got all their permits in place, then they'll fall under the ordinance as far as the music. And again, if we have somebody that is a repeat offender and we have a lot of violations, when their annual renewal comes around, we'll look at that, and it could be something that could be decided, hey, we're not going to renew you this year. As far as having tables and chairs outside and cleanup, that's all in the ordinance. It's their responsibility. They are not allowed to affix anything permanently to the ground, and quite frankly, at the end of the night, they have to bring stuff indoors, up against the building, so at night it's a nice clean place. So we don't want to encourage overnight loitering at these places. And so all of that is built out in the ordinance. We just didn't provide a copy because, like I said, quite frankly, we're still finalizing the ordinance, and that'll go to council either December or January.
And that's after we get to see the fine part of it, or are we just supporting that this is something we'd like to see, or
Yeah.
I just want to know what extent do we have any influence?
I would say absolutely. I mean, your recommendation is going to be taken to council one way or the other. So as far as influence, absolutely. But because this is an ordinance, as far as authority for implementing an ordinance, no, the CRA does not. That's all council.
Okay, on your comment that this is catering to one developer, wasn't the history of this that this idea was brought up and we were generally in favor of it, and then we talked about doing a pilot program? So we weren't doing this at their request. It was, we wanted to do this, and they got excited about it.
And the coffee shop, quite frankly, is also eligible. And we were gonna make sure once this ordinance passed, once the ordinance passes, we're gonna say, hey, you can apply for this, and, yeah, make it legal, so, but yes.
Gary, oh wait, sorry, Jeff, are you done? Gary?
The way I understand this is a pilot program. The intent of the pilot program, at least from my perspective, is that we start to work out all the details and all the nitty gritty that needs to be put into the actual ordinance, whether it has to do with noise and things to that extent, what has to be done with the seating and so forth, all the items that were mentioned. This is just a pilot program. Let's get it out there, let's test it, let's find out what works, what doesn't work, and then we can tailor better the ultimate ordinance that hopefully City Council will then adopt.
Yes.
So I'm really in favor of this and would like to see it move forward. Thank you.
That was a great way of wording that. You said that much better than I did, so
So
thank you.
we're calling this a pilot program because it's the first time we're trying it, but it's been tried in every city in Florida already, as well as in Europe. And so we already know that adults are mature enough to handle
Georgia
this. I strongly agree that we go forward with this because it's what every modern city allows for. Even in our trip to the FRA conference, Fort Myers, we sat and ate at a place just like that. So I'm very strongly for this, and I don't know if we have to discuss this, but I think having the fences is a bad idea. It should just be on the road, or it should just be out on the sidewalk, just like every other city.
Anyone?
Minneapolis.
Okay.
St. Pete.
Miami, St. Pete?
Yeah, I was just
Has no
St. Pete.
fences.
Well, the Clearwater is next to St. Pete. Anywho, side point. Okay, anyone else have any more comments? I want to clarify.
The reason why I don't like fences, let me explain it, because it does remove the public access. You can't, it's like, look at the boardwalk that we have right now. All those restaurants on the boardwalk have fences, and so they basically claim that as their property now. And the public walkway is now reduced to, a little bit when you're going by the restaurants. And when you don't have the fencing, it's now, hey, they're just out in the public space, so that's all I'll say.
Then I'll just counter. In Spain, when I was there for my kids, my kid had a trip, so I went with the school, and they do it in the middle of their walkways and their drive spaces, and they're not permanent, but they roll out flower beds. It's a visual break. I'm not saying it has to be a fence or it has to be a big orange block. I'm saying that there are visual.
That's a great point, and that is something we were looking
Visual
at, yes.
cues to say, you cannot take alcohol past this
Yes.
point. A big part of the thing is, with
Yep.
that, is that you have the cops who have to regulate this, and you have these people hanging out this table, and more people joining the table, and that circle of circumference of those people at that table on the corner lot are now intruding past where they got their permit for. Cops can't regulate that if there's not a visual cue. I'm saying a visual cue. I'm not saying a fence, I'm not saying it's gotta be,
Yes.
I'm saying a visual cue. Minneapolis has a visual cue, and when I was, my mom was there, so I went there, their visual cue was actually in the ground, it was part of the sidewalk, like the city built in a visual little line, and they were on the right side of it.
That's a great point, and that's something I left out, was not intentional, honestly, my head's spinning with all of our stuff we have going on, but, yes, so one of the things when we were having our meeting internally with the ordinance was talking about having the movable planters. So at night, those can be brought up against the building, they're kept nice and secure, and quite frankly, I think at this time, that's something that staff would encourage, because it provides for that nice aesthetic, but it also, to Francis's point, keeps the intention of not having the alcohol spilling out and kind of just turning into a party street. But yeah, so there'll definitely still be things to work out throughout that pilot program with that first year. Our goal is to work out those kinks and then again, start implementing that on other avenues throughout the downtown.
Anybody else? You want to push? Are you good?
Just, on the Angelo group, they're going to be able to set something up in advance of the program being established. We don't know exactly what they're going to do, and if they did something we didn't like, we should have the ability to say, hey, that aspect of it isn't going to work, you need to back off.
Yeah.
So is that reflected in this, or do we need to say that?
I can respond to that. What they're doing is not returning the parking spaces to parking spaces. So what they're asking to do in advance of this pilot program being approved is to pave the area in preparation for it. They're not gonna actually put anything out until it's approved and reviewed and the ordinance goes through and all that.
That's not what this says. It says to utilize the concept in advance of the pilot program.
I think what she meant by that was they want to prepare the space, so when the ordinance is approved by council, assuming it's approved, and then that establishment gets their permits approved,
Then why
they
are we
won't
saying?
have, they don't wanna put the parking spaces back, they basically wanna prep the area for this. Now, if council doesn't approve this, then they won't obviously be able to utilize it, but what they're asking for is to basically put the parking spaces, not put the parking spaces back and prep it to be able to use this when it's approved.
Can we modify that instead of saying
Well-
utilize the concept to say prepare the space?
The fourth whereas says they request prior authorization to reconstruct a right-of-way in front of the property at the cost of the developer in advance of council approving this pilot program to allow for construction to occur without delaying the opening of this project.
Yeah, and that's good, but then section 1, part 1, says to utilize the concept. Why don't we just say prepare the space instead of utilize the concept?
We can go back and change the resolution for adoption at the next meeting, but I'm going to be very frank, it's going to council next week. And then the next time you would see this is December.
But as far as us adopting it, it can't be edited.
Okay.
Yeah, I can clarify that. How to say it though.
Approval of the Angelo Group to prepare their space in advance for the consistent, prepare the space in anticipation of the outdoor dining program, in advance of the program being established.
I'm going to be real honest, I'm not seeing how that's very different than what we say. We say approval of the Angelo Group to utilize the concept for the outdoor dining pilot program in advance of this pilot program being established. So we're not saying we're approving them to put out everything, we're saying for the concept, which allows them to pave that right of way, and then they're still gonna have to come back to us with,
Maybe that's what we say. We say to reconstruct the right of way in advance of the pilot program being established.
So
it says that in the fourth whereas.
No, in the section 1, part 1.
Okay. I will leave that up to the board.
So I have one last question before we do a motion, and I know David's dying to push it, because I remember your very first motion you ever made was to try, so he would like to do this one, just done right. Parking. So this motion is saying, we're under the impression that you won't have to put that parking back.
Unless this fails, and if for some reason,
If it fails. So does that mean that in the future, for pilot programs, people will be able to remove parking in front of their establishments as well? So it's gonna be a case-by-case basis, obviously. They'll have to get approved for that outdoor dining and then approved for that right-of-way permit. So potentially, yes, there could be other opportunities where parking would have to be eliminated. Which gets us back to our meeting with council. I would like to include that as a fourth point, and did like a subsection of our parking discussion with them.
Okay,
If parking is an infrastructure project or not.
sure.
I think parking is infrastructure.
Okay.
Put that up there. Wait, I am ready for a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-13.
Do you want to make any amendments to it or leave it as stated?
I think section 1.1 is fine. Let's see,
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Gary Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Frances Pawlowski,
Yes.
Mr. David McGraw.
yes.
Thank you. And again, both of these are going to be on the next council meeting, so we will have some formal direction from council.
Okay. For time's sake, we have 15 minutes. I think we're going to have to do a little speed update on this last one for the new business. I know it's approve or disapprove. So
obviously this is a very exciting project, Latham Plaza. When we were working through trying to take the concept that we had done previously and figure out where we want to take that moving forward, we don't want to completely steer away from that because there was a lot of public input involved, and we are not invalidating that. That's very important. However, times have changed, COVID hit, we learned the importance of having really useful outside space, I think, during the pandemic. We also, since now potentially are going to have an outdoor dining pilot program facing one side, we're going to potentially have a large P3 development on the other, so things have changed. So keeping that in mind, Half Associates came back to staff and they said, you know, we feel like we can offer our best services if we break this into two parts. And this first part needs to be refining that concept, public meetings, and, you know, it's all kind of spelled out in the attachment I gave you guys. But the reason we broke it out like that was to, you know, we could have come back to you guys with some arbitrary number that we kind of estimated, and then what we didn't want to happen is we get into the public, you know, comment section, we do council meetings, CRA meetings, and we change the concept substantially to where that number is going to fluctuate in the large way in the long run, and so that is why we broke this out. So this first section is going to be for conceptual design, community engagement and meetings, the tree surveying, all the surveying services, and then if needed, we do have the ability to do fountain engineering and splash pad engineering, but again, that will come with some direction from you guys and council as to whether we move forward on those. And I would like to say, I know we don't have a lot of time, but we do have the project manager, Mr. Dustin Felix, with us. Thank you. So.
Open to the floor. I have words, but I'll say go ahead.
I just know that they locked this in with like, you know, here's the project and it's these 2.5 acres, but now that we have this outdoor sidewalk in down here, it would be really nice if, you know, like at the airport where they have that really wide raised sidewalk that your car has to go, you know, up and over. If we did that to connect Latham Plaza to now the First Street's larger sidewalk, it acts as a speed bump and a nice level walkway in and out of the plaza. It'd be nice if we could tie that into it.
I would say honestly that'll be some stuff we can workshop. And I will say in defense of Half, they went with this because that's what we gave them at the time. So that's on staff. You know, we told them, hey, this is your parameters. We mapped out Latham Plaza specifically.
And the only thing I'll add to that is this, the police force was told multiple times that that is an issue and a regulation issue with speed bumps. So
Yeah.
we rarely will ever get anything left, even though it would be a pedestrian right away because of Columbia stop signs.
Really?
It cannot be in the middle of the street, Columbia stop signs. So just know that that may be a hard wall. Anybody else want to have, Gary?
Just a couple of quick comments, and Taylor and I have talked about this a little bit, so it's not really anything new, but I want to make sure that as the design team moves forward with this exercise, that they really consider all of the aspects surrounding the plaza itself. And what I'm referring to is that there's a potential P3 development that will occur in the south parking lot. How does that tie, and does it make sense to make that a soft edge so that at some point in time when the design for that P3 project comes along, it seamlessly integrates with the plaza itself? Same thing on First Avenue North. And then how do we look at the use of the space as it relates to the pavilion and so forth? There are a lot of interesting competing edges to this thing, and we really need to think about how those edges dictate what happens maybe a little bit in the plaza itself. But then there are certain criteria that we have for the plaza that I think have already been presented by Heather and Taylor, and it's going to take some real thinking and creative thought to come up with something that's special for this plaza. So hopefully this exercise will start leading us in that direction. Thank you.
I missed the name. Was it
Dustin Felix, and he is with Half. He is the project manager on this project.
Do you mind coming up and maybe addressing a couple questions, please? I'm assuming that's okay. I know we got short time from you.
And I do want to say to Gary's point, you know, that's where I think their community engagement and meetings portion is going to come into effect. You know, again, when we had that original concept done, we didn't have those plans for either side of Latham Plaza. and, staff, and then the community engagement portion, working with you guys in council to make sure we take all of those into account.
And I think what David was asking about before, it's referred to as a speed table, is what the little raised areas are that become walkways to a certain extent to get across the street, but also minimizes traffic speeds and things.
Mr. Felix, sorry.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming. For me, I know that I'm assuming you saw the Dix Heights,
Yes.
all those drawings, what have you, and I know that you have heard just a little bit of what we've been saying. A lot of us are frustrated about our timing and frustrated about how long things take to be done. So my biggest concern and stress is I don't know necessarily how much you've been given and then what your time scope is. I know this gives me some kind of idea, but for, it's a big green space. We have certain things we want to have objectives taken care of. I'd kind of like to hear what your understanding of this project is and what your thought process is as far as timing. If you don't mind.
You have a copy of?
Yes, we do have it.
So right there under point 1, abbreviated project description, that goes into several bullet points. And so that comes from the meeting that we had with staff back in September, as well as what I've taken out of the request for proposal position. So that actually one of the reasons I came here, I wasn't asked to come here, came here on my own, was I want to start listening.
To start listening to this. Right. So I just wanted to clarify, because you just heard that we have multiple points, competing parts, and what have you. And my biggest worry and concern is we've taken public opinion on this twice now, and nothing's been done. And now we're talking about doing another one. I'm just a little concerned about that. So how are we planning to address that?
Sure, and I think we can kind of tag team this one. As far as, going as extensive as we did with Dix Height, we won't be doing that. At least that's not our intention. I think with the Dix Height stuff, we were literally starting from nothing and having to really re-envision this. Since they are starting with that concept, we will pretty much do it kind of in this kind of a format. It's a workshop, CRA. If the public has additional comments, that's wonderful. But as far as doing the, red dot, green dot, item by item, sticky note exercises, we feel like we've done plenty of that. And we don't want to waste time, and we don't want to,
So we're going to honor all of those opinions, even though they're about that deal.
And they, in the proposal, when they submitted for that, we also included all the Dix Heights stuff, all that feedback, and then as well as the meeting we had a few months before we went out with this, with your guys' comments on what we learned through the pandemic and what we learned with the delays and where we want to see this overall provided to have.
Okay. That was my biggest, I read it, I don't have my notes, but they're on my desk. My biggest worry is that there's going to be, tripping.
Sure.
The changing from company to a new company, where did the vision go? I just want to make sure that we don't get stuck in the weeds to get caught up. That's really what I want to make sure.
I'll say this, and I said this, Gary, and I chatted a little bit earlier today. I feel very confident moving forward. They have been staying on top of us, quite frankly. They have been wonderful to work with, and he knows how to get a hold of me, call, text, email. We talk several times a week right now as it is, and I feel like as this project continues, that will only be intensified.
Right. Does anybody else have questions for him? I was just making sure to do due diligence, that's all.
I will, again, that's why I'm here.
Yes, okay, wonderful. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Since we have literally 7 minutes, this is the last, we have plenty of time in 7 minutes to discuss. Does anyone else want to ask any questions of this before we either approve or disapprove moving forward with this new?
And if I may, this also has to go to City Council. So this will go to them again at their next meeting, pending the approval of you guys, it will go to them.
And I'm assuming the design part of this will happen after our meeting with them, like to fine tune it for what they're wanting to see as well.
I would think we're gonna have to work very closely with Half Associates and continue to take the feedback and work with them, and I'm sure they will be more than happy to attend that workshop.
Okay,
We have 2 to 3 meetings, 2
Yeah.
to 3 CLA meetings.
yeah. But that just really means 2 months.
Yeah.
But I just don't know where it says, when does 2 months happen? Is it gonna be after? So like, my whole thought, this is where, just so you know, we have this meeting, we are now having a meeting with the council, they're gonna give us direction, and to make sure we're on the same page, and then hypothetically, they're gonna need some time frame to design it, and then we're gonna have some more meetings. So now we're thinking a year, 6 months to a year. Just with that simple, because we're waiting till the January, they need time, we need more than like 2 minutes to work on it. So give them a month or 2 or 3, and then we have 2 months of our own. So there's a whole year when we were talking about last year, starting this project this year. We had money funded for it this pay cycle,
Mhm.
and now we're talking about pushing it back. That's why I was saying, how much farther are we going to be pushing this back because of this change?
I don't foresee having holdups. I mean, again, things happen. I mean, who knows? We go into another global shutdown. God, knock on wood, please don't. But, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. As far as their timeline, though, they have got a very, very aggressive timeline. They are going to be very aggressive, and I mean that in the best way. Everybody is on the same page as far as reaching that centennial celebration for the city of Jacksonville Beach.
But a year ago, at our meeting with city council, they said they were judging us on Latham Plaza.
Well,
And
they
we're
knew
gonna see them
then.
in January, say, hey, we had all these plans, we ready to move forward, now we're changing to a new company. I didn't.
Well, they understand why. I mean, it was out.
Do they really?
It
Is
was
that how we
in,
present
it was
it?
in their quarterly report from staff. So
Do they really?
that's, I'm not sure.
That's that was my only hot button. Yes, Jeff?
So, their meeting, city council is meeting next week, right?
The 21st. Yep.
21st. So if we adopt this tonight, or pass this tonight, goes with, before them, the 21st.
Mhm.
We don't have to wait until the end of January to talk with them in order to move forward with this. We can
Yeah,
have this adopted, city council approved, and this can be in process
absolutely.
as one of the items, but still be one of the items we talked about with, city council. So
Sure.
we don't have to wait 2 months to get started on this.
Right, there's gonna be a ton of surveying services and things that we're gonna have legwork done ahead of that meeting, and so I think we have plenty of work between now and January, should this get approved by both, the board and council. That's my point.
Anybody else? How do you want us to go about this? Do you just want, yay or nays, or do you want roll call?
We're gonna request, if you guys don't mind, a formal, somebody make a motion, second, and then a roll call, please.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to move forward with
Approve scope of services and fees.
approved scope and services and fees for Latham Plaza.
Thank you.
I'll take a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And with that, please move forward.
All right, Mr. Gary Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Jeff Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Francis Pawlowski.
Yes.
Mr. David McGraw.
Yes.
And is there any other items in the last 3.5 minutes you've given me for today's meeting?
Just again, thank you guys. I know we packed a lot into this meeting, and we had to get through it in a rush, so we really appreciate that and the feedback. And we will make sure we inform Mark at the trash can. I know, like I said, there were a couple of things in Public Works I need to circle back with, so I will do that.
And
And
they'll
then,
come from the 30th.
absolutely, as soon as we have guarantee on that date, we will send that to you guys.
And Taylor, would you just reconfirm for my benefit that there are no further meetings this month of the CRA or
Correct.
workshops? And then for the month of December, right now, we only have one scheduled meeting workshop, that's
The 19th? Yes, the 19th.
the 19th.
Yep.
Okay. And that'll be it for the year then?
Yes, sir.
Is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted to double check because I
Oh, I
know
get it.
some things were bouncing
Yeah.
around a little bit and I wanted to make sure I was
Yes,
updated on
no.
my calendar.
We kind of had a little out of whack, so absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Of course.
And with that, we will give you our last 2 minutes to walk out and we've done. Meeting adjourned. We got to switch.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.